I think generally we were seen as completely balmy. There was really not a lot of theory or concept behind the idea. In Scotland, we've got an incredibly well-developed community infrastructure with a very strong tradition of voluntary sector engagement. One of the major issues that community groups have always faced is how they earn revenue to underpin their social purposes. And so we felt that renewable energy generation was a fantastic opportunity to bring in revenue to support community-based action, community-based development, and also to save costs in many of the community facilities that need heating and energy and could convert to renewable energy. So those were the driving forces for the idea of community energy development.
When communities acquired their land, one of the first things they look at is how we're going to raise revenue, and that's where community energy fits in, because not only can they reduce their energy costs, but there's also the potential of selling energy back to the grid.
I think it all started in 2002 when we had a few ideas, and I'd spent a bit of time out at Noidart. They were generating their own electricity for their own use, and we started to realise the easiest thing for communities to do was to actually build their own and invest in their own.
Community energy brings together in a very practical sense sustainable development. What we've done in the last 10 years has been to put absolute practice onto that concept of bringing together social, economic, environmental factors and making it happen in very tangible projects locally.
Maybe 6-7 years ago, that whole idea of having community turbines was mooted as an income stream for the development trusts and as a way of generating income to make the communities more sustainable. The best way that we felt that we could ensure that the whole community had a chance to have their say was to have a postal ballot. And of that, 75% of the people who voted were in favour of the turbine project. And Community Energy Scotland have been involved right at the beginning of the turbine project. They did a lot of their initial feasibility studies. They offered, which obviously helped us get through planning, but they also offered people to support us. All the development trusts in Orkney that have community turbines regularly get together and they share their problems, and that's actually been really successful. No matter how much you work, how much you put in as a volunteer, you can't actually achieve a lot without money. And the turbine is going to give Sharpensea, with its 300 inhabitants, an income of probably conservatively £100,000 a year for the next 20 years. At the beginning of this year, we've funded a out-of-hours ferry, which runs out with the scheduled ferry's timetable. So it's a little 12-person boat, but that is running at a subsidised rate. And we've found that to be a real benefit to the community. And the other thing that we've done is we've bought a community minibus. And again, that's helping some of the more vulnerable folk in the community. The first year of production of the turbine has been quite amazing. It's surpassed all expectations. And we now know that for sure we're going to be £100,000 a year or more for the community. And production has been significantly better than we expected. So we've already made some payouts to community groups, because I think it's really important that the community benefit is there and that they feel that benefit right away. And we know that it's around 7p every time the blades go round. So everybody in Sharpensea is really good at their 7 times table.
The Abernethy Trust is a Christian charitable organisation that operates 4 outdoor centres in Scotland, providing outdoor education primarily to young people, school groups, youth groups. And as a small site in a remote location, we were seeing that the bills were escalating and the income was struggling to match that, and we were finding it difficult to continue that business here. So we started looking at other options as to what we might do, and renewables became our preferred choice, I guess, to see whether we could reduce our fuel bills, our heating costs, and that's what then focused us on to developing a hydro scheme, so that we could find another source of income, as well as that reduce the running costs of the building, so that we had extra income to use for investment for the centre. The hydro scheme is a 90 kilowatt scheme, and it generates approximately £50,000 income a year net, but we've developed it to use most of the electricity as much as we can on the site, so the main centre and the houses that the staff live in are all supplied by the hydro scheme. So we've reduced those overheads, and that's allowed us to have extra income, so our costs have gone down, and we're now reinvesting that money in the development of the centre, and that's allowed us, I guess, to say that this is a secure site in terms of long-term viability for the outdoor education and the long-term viability of people living in this community. For Community Energy Scotland, their involvement's been really helpful. In looking at renewables, they helped us organise an initial feasibility of all the options for renewables, and from that the study revealed that the water supply that we had meant that the hydro was the most viable thing for us. And they've actually then continued to be supportive all the way through, certainly at the end of a phone, whenever we've needed advice.
Initially in 2002 there was a private developer was showing an interest in our common grazing land, looking to put up a wind farm. We then decided to have a go at having our own project. We really started from scratch and we were unsure of what we were doing, but with the help and assistance of HIE's Community Energy Unit at the time, they gave us some direction and a lot of support, and I would say they also supported us all the way through the project to this point. We did our business plan on the basis of 34% capacity factor, but in actual fact the results of the wind monitoring that we did came out at around 47%, so we're looking for good results. Everything had its own problems, planning, looking for funding, but I think maybe the funding aspect and planning, feasibility, there's a whole range of things, but you do get a lot of help along the way. We always looked towards Community Energy Scotland because we always found an open door there.
We're going to start our construction next year, I'll say that with complete confidence, but everything takes longer than you think it will. Major hurdles, planning took a long time, it wasn't too bad. Grid's been a major hurdle for us. Finance isn't easy, it isn't easy to get people to lend you funds, but I have to say we've had excellent support from local planning departments, and all the way through, well, there's no way we would have done it without the support of Community Energy Scotland, who guided us at every turn. We knew we needed to look at all the development opportunities, and renewables were one of the most important things. We have excellent wind and we also have excellent wave, but wind was the one that we thought we could use to make some funds to use for the benefit of our community. We worked closely with the others on Lewis and with the ones in the Southern Isles as well, and supported each other through the good times and the bad times.
Community Energy Scotland works through urban areas as well as island communities, and they've made a huge difference to the communities they're involved with.
The whole idea that you could build a £1.4 million new state-of-the-art first purpose-built skate park in the United Kingdom was quite a big challenge. Then to locate it in an area of multiple deprivation, again, there was the risk factor. But we felt that that was the kids and the young folk that we were really engaging with and where we wanted to make the biggest difference. We run homework support clubs, we run youth clubs, we run IT for the elderly, our Silver Surfers clubs that we run a few times a week. We do filmmaking for the elderly. It is a whole 21st century community centre. We use basically gas heating, and we were using large gas blowers which were very expensive to operate, and we were really looking for a cheaper source of energy, and the air-to-air heat pumps are one that was put to us as a cheaper source of running the project, because we have fairly hefty bills, over £20,000 a year currently. We're doing a new build. We wanted to try and reduce the costs of running costs right from day one. We've worked with 2 different funders that are coming, and that has allowed us to build the building to a much higher spec of insulation, of PV panels, of air-to-air heat pumps, and it's made the building much greener, and also hopefully will make it much cheaper to run for us. We travelled around and visited other projects around Scotland that were having to renew their energy due to the extensive costs of keeping them going. It's been a great support we've had. Any savings go back right into the pot for expanding the work here.
Neilston Development Trust has been going since 2004, and we had lots of things we were doing in the town, one of them being the acquisition of the bank building. We have a plan for our town which goes forward into 2030, and so it takes a long view of the possibilities for our place. This is a very windy place and carbon free. We're looking for, as they put it, a savvy community who they could work with to do a small development, and that's where we started. We weren't really focused on sole ownership of a turbine at that point. This proposition of a joint venture seemed to us to meet our needs, in the sense that the risk and the technical expertise involved in becoming involved in renewables would be taken by our partner, and we had the option, once consent was delivered, to buy into the joint venture. So it seemed to us a very neat way of generating that kind of income. Planning was a hurdle, it always is, but the real test for us was to raise the funds. We had to find a large amount of money in order to meet the offer that had been made to us of 49.9% stake in the joint venture. As it turned out, we raised £950,000 from social investors, and that enabled us to buy 28.3% stake, which is still a very considerable revenue stream for us. Here we have a small town of 5,500 people with around £10 million to invest in the future of this place over the next 25 years. Well, luckily we had a very clear idea of where we wanted to go with this income, which was to fund major projects in Neilston which are set out in our community plan, which is called the Town Charter. So it's a very neat match between our aspirations and the means to deliver them. And what community gets that opportunity?
Nakando Wool Mill. That's been producing wool since at least 1784, and it's the longest serving wool mill in Scotland, if not the UK. Historically, it is really important. The textile machinery and the whole site was A-listed by Historic Scotland as of international importance. And so we now have this wonderful place which will still be manufacturing cloth and selling cloth, but we have a visitor centre where people can see the history of the mill. We have a lovely cafe, and we have a shop, and we have an education centre. There was no heating in the buildings on this site at all, apart from 2 open fires in the mill house. So we knew if we were going to have people working here, if we were going to open it to the public, we had to have a decent heating system. This is quite an isolated site, so there's no gas, and oil was really our only other option, and that was pretty expensive. So the Trust really wants to go for renewable energy anyway, just on principle. So we took advice from Community Energy Scotland, and we looked at underfloor heating and using wood pellet boilers. Underfloor heating is really kind to old buildings. You can keep it at what's called a conservation temperature, and it's really worked very well, and we're very pleased with it. The machinery was originally run by water power, and one of the things that the Trust wanted to do was to get the water wheel going again. And what we're going to do is to actually generate some power from that.
First of all then, thanks to everyone for making the effort to come here today.
Today we are telling our community the final design of the scheme. We've not been able to do that in the past. We look at many different options. Now we've frozen the design, so we're showing folk what it looks like. We have the same problems as other rural communities in Scotland. We have had, in the last 10 years, our borough hall closed, our library closed, our community centre closed, our football pitch derelict, our tennis courts gone. Both our post offices under threat, and a couple of years ago there was a threat to close our school. We have to respond to that, or all these things are going to happen. So what we're trying to do is save this community and not see it slowly just fade away into a retirement home. Right at the very start, we did two things. We started working on a community development plan, and we had a ballot where we asked the community, would they support us investigating the possibility of a community wind farm? And in that ballot we got a 38% return, which is actually better than the local elections, and we got 92% support. So then we said, okay, well, we've got an idea. Those needs you've identified can be addressed if we can have a wind farm. The wind farm is there for a reason, is to help save our village. The conventional wisdom was if you were a community wind farm, you'd have one turbine. Our thinking was that if there was the space for it, why wouldn't we have more? Why would we limit the community's ability to benefit itself and the surrounding area? It just seems sensible to go for what would be acceptable in other issues like visual impact. I mean, your grid connection is the same whether you've got 1 or 5, so the financial benefits of having it a bit bigger are clear. We get money basically for selling our electricity, and that money comes into the community, and the Community Development Trust will then hopefully use it to benefit our people. And we have some very gifted people in this community. So we learned and we just got stuck in. And I mean, you have to understand, when a community like ours starts off, we don't know anything about this. So we had to go and talk to people. We had to go and ask for advice. Community Energy Scotland was absolutely key to that, and people literally just steered us in the right direction.
Moffat Can, in the south of Scotland, is a community company and charity, and really what we've tried to do is create a microcosm of what a low carbon society could be. We're providing 26 local jobs and also local services. We're providing recycling services for the local area. We have Scotland's first aquaponicum, which is really exciting, and that means that we're growing fish and fruit and veg in harmony in the same system. All the growing is in water, not in soil, and the water for the fish that we have, which is an African fish, it's tilapia, a sort of bream, needs to be warm, so we heat that water using renewable energy. We have 54 solar PV panels on the roof of our converted church. We have a ground source heat pump, and so it's a closed loop system, and we're able to sell on the fish and the fruit and veg locally in the town, and this all helps us to become sustainable as a community company, providing jobs locally.
If we look at the Isle of Gigha, a community that prior to the community takeover there was less than 100 people, had one of the greatest rates of decline of any of the Scottish islands. After the community takeover, and particularly with the wind farm, which enabled that island to achieve financial sustainability, that island now has one of the greatest rates of population growth of any Scottish island.
We have to drive innovation, regulatory change, and encourage new incentives to allow that local generation and local use to thrive.
The future is really exciting, and what is interesting from a Scotland perspective is other countries throughout the world are recognising what's been achieved in Scotland.
Looking back, 10 years later, the fact that we've assisted communities throughout the length and breadth of Scotland to the extent that we have, I never thought would be possible.
It's great now. We've got 17 megawatts by the end of this year, which is absolutely tremendous. It's starting to double, and hopefully next year we'll have 33 megawatts.
The Scottish Government has a target of 500 megawatts of community generated power for Scotland, and the Community Energy Scotland team are going to have to help deliver that. So they're going to have a really important role. They've helped around 1,000 communities so far, and that's made a huge difference to these places in terms of energy, jobs, income, and they're going to make a big difference in future, I'm sure.
Community Energy Scotland has been the catalyst, and we have to thank the agencies where we grew up in, like Highlands and Islands Enterprise, who had faith in what we were achieving, and the Scottish Government, who also supported us throughout this. The big lottery have come on board.
To actually be able to put up something like we see here today, a big turbine, and now you've got an income stream for the next 20 years into a small community that can actually change the way that everyone can live there is just fantastic.
Thank goodness it's windy.